At this point, we've started pinning our binding to the bottom of the circle skirt. So I started right at the back seam where our zipper is with my first piece. And I pinned all the way around the dress until I got back around. I still have some tail here on my bias trim. Once I got over here, nearing the edge, I went ahead and stopped pinning. Now, we're going to measure from this center seam, because that's where our join is going to end up. We're going to measure over 6 inches and mark that point with a pin. And the same thing on the other side. Measure over 6 inches and mark this point with a pin. You can then remove all the pins that are between those two. So now I have a loose tail and a loose tail, which is leaving me approximately 12 inches right here. You're going to need this 12 inches to work with when we start joining these ends. So go ahead and leave the 12 inches open, and we're going to take this to the sewing machine and sew on the binding all the way around the circle skirt until we get to this other pin. So from pin around to the other pin, all the way around the circle, and then stop here. And then we'll come back for the next step. Now at this point, we're going to go ahead and lay this long side over. And we know where our center point is because it's this seam. So I went ahead and marked that on my binding. And then from that center point, you're going to measure over 2 inches. We're doing 2 inches because the finished width of our bias tape, when it's completely opened all the way up, is 2 inches. So that's why we're measuring over 2 inches. Measure 2 inches and then cut off that tail. So ultimately, you have a piece that lines up exactly with the seam, and then you have a piece that's 2 inches longer than that seam. So that's what we have at this point. All right, so at this point, you've got your one piece that overlaps that center seam by 2 inches, and you've got your other piece that ends right at that center seam. So the next thing you're going to do is open this overlapping longer piece up. And I flipped it so that it's kind of creating a 90-degree angle. It's easy to find that 90 degrees because you've got this seam on the back of your dress. Then I'm going to open the other piece up as well. And notice it's not being twisted, it's just opening. I'm just going to take this piece and line it up with this piece. And you want to line it up at a 90-degree angle across the top and a 90-degree angle across the side here. So I'm going to go ahead and pin those two together just like that. You want to have several anchor points so that it doesn't come unattached. You don't want those to slip at all. Now, when I sew, I'm going to sew from this corner where the other piece is, you can see it there, to this corner. So it's going to be a 45-degree angle that I'm sewing just where the two pieces overlap at. Now I've sewn my diagonal line where the two pieces overlap from here to here. And now I'm just going to use my scissors, and I'm going to cut with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance away from that seam so that I don't have a lot of bulk in there. Now I should be able to fold my bias trim back up. You might need to press where that seam is. You'll want to press it open. And then I can go ahead and sandwich the rest of my skirt into my bias trim and finish pinning it, and you should have a perfect fit.